If there's one thing that's true about me, it's that my art style changes just about every single day. I've gone from funny haha 2D posters to really heartfelt and emotional 3D nights. And it's honestly one of my favorite things in the world to try new things and to constantly evolve with the art that I create. Because of this, and since my art style can get pretty confusing, I've received a few comments of what it could be called, such as metal kidcore or nightcore even. While these are some great names, I feel that I can do better in encompassing all areas of my art. So I'm gonna call it Yummy Night Metal Toycore. Yeah, it's a mouthful. What I'm trying to get at is that I feel like I finally found my own art style, which really excites me, especially when I was trying to get to that point for so long. But I don't want to let that sit. Essentially, in my head, greedy or complacent art breeds resentment towards not only your own creations, but the creations around you as well. I know I'm guilty of this. This is such a skewed way of viewing your art and yourself. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that there's a difference between self-critique, inspiration, and motivation, and self-deprecation, selfishness, and greed. Basically, this side is bad news, buddy, and this side is good. Or, you get the point. With all of that being said, and my yapping finally complete, let's jump into the goal of this yummy kid core, toy, yummy core video of mine. In order to remain consistent, I've gone ahead and created a 3D night that will be the basis for a few of the posters that we create together. But specifically, I want each poster to include a knight, a castle, a dragon, and some kind of weapon. All right, let's go ahead and dive on in together. And at this point in recording, I haven't even made the first poster yet, so the water is terrifying. Vintage Viewmaster Reels come from the creation of a Viewmaster, which is basically just like a really old VR headset. While there are many ways of creating these reels, the way that I want to focus on today is when model makers would take toys, props, or clay even, and create really beautiful miniature scenes. I'm going to start this process off by focusing on the castle itself. And for a lot of these little pieces, I'm trying to step into the energy of a diorama. So that means really simple shapes and a strong composition rather than detailed 3D renders. Once I have a good castle foundation in place, I'll go ahead and start working on the dragons, which I want to look more childish and Viewmastery at the end result. To do this, I'm gonna work from the side view and really exaggerate a few features like the eyes and the teeth and the mouth. For the bodies of the dragons, I'm gonna use a curve modifier that's been converted into a mesh that I can then sculpt to add wrinkles and muscle fibers. I was honestly super happy with how these dragons came out, and I even decided to wrap a few around some of the buildings to give it a bit more lore. Next, we'll go ahead and add a few little night guys around the scene, and I'm really leaning into that wooden figurine kind of look, which means a lot of lifeless eyes and weird proportions. I also wanted to scatter these guys throughout the scene to give little hero moments throughout. Specifically, I love this guy back here, slaying a dragon all by himself. What a warrior. Finally, I'll add a few final touches like his king watching his kingdom fall to ruin, some grain texture in Photoshop, and that ever-important Viewmaster blurred border. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a completed 3D render of a Viewmaster reel that I've created in order for this video to be 10 styles long. If you don't know what noir is, you're actually looking right at it. Noir is a style of filmmaking that comes from old Hollywood crime and drama movies. These films typically had really dark themes which worked really well with the gritty and contrasting nature of each scene. So I thought it'd be fun to make a 3D poster in that style, but with a fantasy setting, of course. You know, really lean into the juxtaposition of it all. Here's some of my favorite reference images I found that really inspired me throughout this whole process. Specifically, I love the towering skyscrapers, fog, lights, and overall composition of these. So the noir screen recordings that I spent hours on are no longer here. They are in the void. I'm not sure what happened in my little process here, but I can't put those behind me. So we're gonna run through the finished blend file together and pretend like I'm doing it all with you. It's gonna have to work. First, I made these buildings, like this one, this one, this one, and this one. Then I made some fog around the buildings, like here, here, and here. Wow, look at all of that atmosphere. Then I brought in our night guy and posed him in a really dramatic way. Wow, look at how noir this is. Then I spent hours of my life sculpting this whole dragon with smoke breath. But yeah, that's the completed poster. Noir is a cool style, and I'm glad that you could watch this really in-depth process with me. From Kermit the Frog to that little green guy who talks backwards in Star Wars, puppets have been around for generations. Something about puppets gives a sort of comforting but also extremely uncanny vibe at the same time. And by uncanny, I specifically mean that scene from A Polar Express, which is probably why I'm afraid of puppets on trains now, which is also known as Puppet Phobia Express. While it would be fun to create my own Polar Express puppet, I wanted to lean more into the comforting side. So I'm going for a more puppet theater kind of look. First, I'm going to create the stage, which is basically a cutout cube that I've modified a little bit using the mirror modifier. As a quick note, I didn't know this modifier existed for the first full year that I did Blender. I would just try to line up the objects on the side, which obviously didn't work out well. So don't be like me. Maybe watch a video on how the modifiers work. Because I still don't know what half of these do, honestly. Next, I'll add some velvet curtains, courtesy of Blender Kit, some wood textures all around, and of course a spotlight. That way we can really start capturing the puppet theater energy we so desire. For the background of my scene, I'm using a photo of a painting that I found on Adobe Stock. This really adds to the ambiance of the theater kind of look that I'm going for and gives it a really flat, painted background. After that, I wanted to create a few wooden props that acted as the castle for our poster. For this, I used a plane that was really flat to create the castle wall, then added some wooden supports and a few little ladders behind it to add to the overall set look that I'm going for. For the dragon, I'm going to reuse the head from our Viewmaster poster in order to save me a lot of time. My goal here is to go for one of those dragons that you would see in a parade, complete with little legs and feet poking out and everything. Finally, for our little knight, I'm going for a really wooden, puppety type look here, which means really sharp facial features, dead eyes, a little sword, and even a little hat to top them off. After a few final touches, I'll throw on some grain texture in Photoshop, and ladies and gentlemen, here is the puppet theater poster that dreams were made of. Believe it or not, outside of this box that you often see me in, I actually have a life. And in that life, my wonderful wife and I love to visit art museums. There's just a certain ambiance and vibe to them that you can't really find anywhere else. It's also amazing that we can still find inspiration from historical pieces of art. So I wanted to take those inspirations and create a little 3D exhibit of my own. I've also always wanted to try this, so. Specifically, I wanted to create a display case with a few historical items, like a dragon teapot or a knight sculpted from rock, and a few other little surprises. Let's jump into it. In order to tackle this poster, I'm splitting it up into a few different parts, starting first with the old dragon teapot. For this, I'm using really simple shapes and combining those together in order to form a, well, teapot. From there, it's just a bunch of tweaking until I get the most realistic result as possible. Since this is the dragon portion of the poster, I'll use this opportunity to sculpt the spout in the form of a dragon. It is a dragon teapot, so. Next, I'll take the helmet from our original 3D knight and kind of meld it together with a rectangle rock, jade, emerald kind of thingy. Also, I know that there's no footage behind me. I don't know what happened, but the file got corrupted, but here's the end result. It looks kind of like something that could be in a museum. With the main items done, I'll add in a medieval dagger courtesy of Blender Kit that's going to be on display. I'll create the actual display case with a few glass textures and porcelain textures that give it that good display case feel. I'll then add in a few castle bricks that are kind of falling apart that are also going to be on display. I'll take a deep breath, I'll then create the name tags that are going to be showing everything that's on display. I'll keep saying display until it's annoying. And finally, my fellow historians, there is a completed display case museum render poster for your eyes to look at. Minecraft is a game about blocks. That's about it. No, but seriously, if you don't know what Minecraft is, you're probably living under a coal block. You get it? Because instead of a rock, Minecraft is basically a glorified 3D modeling program, so I thought why not use it for all it's worth and create a 3D poster in this beautiful game. As a quick side note, Minecraft is probably the reason I'm here today. Well, not in like life terms, but in like creative terms. It single-handedly recaptured my childlike wonder I had all those years ago when I put my first Lego set together. So yeah, I don't care if you hate it or not, Minecraft is William Designs. And if you hate it, well, you hate William Designs. So, in order to make this happen, I'm going to use creative mode so I have unlimited access to as many blocks as possible. I was originally going to do this all in survival and grind my way to a castle, but I don't have the time or patience for that. If you haven't caught on to it yet, this whole portion of the video was an excuse for me to spend a few days playing Minecraft. Like I mentioned before, every time I step back into this little blocky game, I feel transported back into my 9-year-old self, without a care of how much taxes cost or when my next paycheck was hitting. I really enjoyed coming up with a concept for this castle, and while most of the chores around it were super repetitive, that's what made it so peaceful. From making a bridge to creating fantasy towers, I forgot how creative this game can really be. Once I had a shape in place that I was happy with, I used a bunch of different colored blocks to add some noise. This can take a pretty minimal wall or tower and transform it into the detailed castle I was going for. From there, it's just placing blocks and working from a vantage point to establish a strong silhouette. I tried to go super fantasy with the design here, so really none of it makes a ton of sense, but it's just for fun, so who cares? I could have done this for weeks, but I had to stop at some point. So once I had a castle I was happy with, I spawned in the Ender Dragon to save me time from creating a realistic dragon out of blocks. Posed my little guy for a screenshot, added some grain, and bam, that is my 3D poster made in Minecraft. Also, I would do a whole Minecraft series if you guys wanted something like that. Just saying. You know that feeling when you were younger and you would sneak out of your house and hop in one of those little red and yellow cars? You know, the ones that would use your feet to make go? And you would start making it towards the entrance of your neighborhood, thinking that you were late for work at Home Depot, which was off of the main road from your neighborhood. Only to have your mom's friend find you booking it up towards the entrance of the neighborhood and pick you up, making you late to work so you would pee your pants out of pure rage. Well, I wanted to capture that extremely normal and common experience in a poster. But first, what is kidcore? Think of that pizza party you used to have with all the animatronics around, bright primary colors, toys that you haven't seen in 20 years, and nostalgia you will never feel again because we are growing older by the minute and our attention spans have gone down the drain, which means we're forgetting everything that has ever happened to us. So let's make this happen. First, we're going to start with our dear Mr. Knight, who is definitely quite the blockhead. I'm using a clay texture for the skin tones here and a metal texture for the metal pieces. The name of the game here is really cartoony and exaggerated, so he doesn't have a body. Big deal. For our dragon, I'm using a really similar technique from the Viewmaster poster, which is basically taking a curve and converting it to a mesh. That way I can really start to sculpt and add wrinkles and over-exaggerate the clay texture that's already there. I also wanted the face to be super cute, so that means really big eyes and a tiny little mouth. Finally, we'll use the same technique from our little knight to create a princess in peril, a king, and of course a wizard fighting this menacing beast. I'll then throw on some grain and other little effects in Photoshop, and with that we have a kidcore poster pulling out the nostalgia that we all used to have when we would hop in our little red and yellow cars when we were 7 and pee our pants out of pure rage. PlayStation 1 style graphics just have a certain energy to them that you really can't find anywhere else. I could really make a whole video essay about this, but something about the technological limitations at the time created the perfect storm of gameplay and graphics. Games like Tomb Raider, Resident Evil and Crash Bandicoot all had this beautiful art style to it, and they relied on that and relied on your own desire to play the games rather than greed or our pea-sized TikTok brains. That's why I love indie game studios that bring incredible stories in the form of incredible games, with some even using the style I'm talking about. So I want to hark back to the old style of graphics because nostalgia is the greatest drug. Also, I can't get enough of this style and I've always wanted to try it, so here we go. Okay, I want everyone to know that this is my first time attempting anything like this. There are a million videos out there that explain this in more detail and probably better than I ever will. But this is my story, my truth, so I'm going to speak it. First, I'm going to lay out the scene. Specifically, I'm going for a boss battle kind of vibe here, but I wanted it to be in a ruined basement of a castle. So that means big columns and really simple shapes to better show all of the textures. For the textures, I'm going to downscale a few images that I found online into a 256 by 256 pixel square. This will better help show that pixelated nature that we're going for that's so common in the PlayStation 1 style era. But now comes the real fun. I'll use this same process to create rocks, vines, and little bushes as well. For the bushes specifically, I'm actually using a plane with an image texture on it, duplicated on itself a few times. Then I can rotate those planes on itself and create pretty good looking bushes. I was really proud of these. From there, I'll add a cube around the whole scene that I can add a volume texture to. This gives me that ever important fog that was in so many of the older games, but also allows me to diffuse the lights a bit to help with the atmosphere. For my dragon this go around, I wanted to do something different and boss-like. So I decided to make this half dragon, half man thingy. To do this, I used really simple shapes to build out a very muscular body, dragon head, horns, and a few teeth as well. Then I took a stock photo of a dragon that I found online, UV unwrapped my model, and kind of hodgepodged created the texture for this boss monster then. Don't ask me how I did this. I can't really explain it. UV unwrapping is super confusing. Again, there's better videos out there. I'll bring this big scary guy into our scene, add a few final touches, such as a knight's POV using a little magic and sword, and that's it. A fantasy style poster in the PlayStation 1 style graphics. Dark fantasy is a subgenre of fantasy that is dark. No, but seriously, think knights, kings, and castles, but with a dark and almost menacing filter thrown on top. For me, Dark Souls really fits into this category. Huge dark castles, weird creatures, little to no color saturation, and I mean, come on, it's literally called Dark Souls. With that being said, here are some images I found that really fit the style I'm trying to emulate. I want this to be extremely menacing, and say it with me, dark. All right, let's get into it. A lot of my time behind this poster went into making the castle, so I'm going to start there. Specifically, I'm really trying to lean into the scale of it all, so really tall towers and really big walls. I'll also place the camera kind of underneath the castle, which gives it that really big towering kind of feel. From there, I'll sculpt a little path up to the castle, create the giant wooden door at the entrance, and also add the castle brick textures, which took a lot longer than the 10 seconds you're seeing here. I'll also add some lights around the scene to really start adding to that dark fantasy kind of vibe I'm going for. For the background of our scene, I'm using a stock photo, much like many of the other posters from this video, of some swirling clouds that will really help frame our giant dragon here in a little bit. It'll look cool. Just trust me, okay? Then we'll start sculpting the big guy. To do this, I'm subdividing a sphere a few times so that way I can push and pull until I get a somewhat dragon-shaped head. Then I can add some eyes, some nostrils, and little spikes as well. After throwing on some dragon scale textures, I'll bring our guy into our main scene. This is also where I'll add some free wings that I found online. I'm sorry, they were free, and I'm tired and I needed to get this video done, so free wings it is. I will also pose him in a really menacing way behind the tower and really frame his head around the swirling clouds. And with that, we have a pretty good dragon castle combo, if I had to say so myself. Finally, we'll bring in our original 3D knight and pose him in a really tiny way at the bottom of the poster. And with that, we have the moodiest fantasy poster you've ever seen. I honestly think it captures the dark fantasy vibe really well. When I was younger, I was obsessed with paper airplanes. I know that's kind of weird, and I don't want to dig into what that means about me, but it literally got to the point where my parents bought me an ultimate guide to paper airplanes one year for Christmas. You better bet I used the heck out of that. While paper airplanes aren't necessarily origami, I needed a segue into this part of the video. So, there you go, a fun fact about the guy that you're watching on the other side of the screen. Basically, my idea behind this poster is to have a knight creating an origami dragon on the craft table. So I'm going to attempt to make something just like that. I'm going to kick things off with the paper dragon, which I'm actually basing off of this origami dragon that I found online, because why not use the source material at hand? For this, I'm focusing on really sharp angles and flat planes in order to get the most paper-like thing as possible. In order to add to the paper effect, I'm actually going to be using a paper texture, believe it or not. Then I'll start adding a few items around the scene, which will add to the craft table kind of look that I'm going for and increase the depth of the composition. Okay, I have a confession to make. A lot of the little items that you're seeing behind me are straight from Blender Kit, which means I didn't make them. But I'm just here to make cool art, and this is the last style that I have to put together for this video, and well, I'm tired. Also, you're watching me for entertainment, right? You're not watching to see me create a realistic paper clip or pencil, I hope. Because if you are, I didn't do that. Sorry. I did think this was clever though. For the castle portion of this poster, I'm using a rook from a chess set. Isn't that the most creative thing you've ever seen? Yeah, I'm a creative genius. Many have said that. Once I had a somewhat crafty table in place, I'll bring in our original 3D knight, struggle tremendously with the armature, but eventually get him to where he's holding the little paper dragon. I'll then add some little cut pieces of paper, a spotlight, some other little lights around the scene, and with that, we have an origami poster made from the dome of William Designs for you to enjoy. I'll just cut to the chase here. I just got back from Walmart and bought this. It's not my proudest moment, and I honestly think I might have blacked out mid-purchase, but I did kind of run out of ideas. So here we are, the real-life poster. I'm also kind of surprised that this fits on my 6'4", 250-pound frame, because this is a child size 5. Oh, but you may be wondering where the dragon of this poster is. Here's Tootsie, the fire-breathing beast. Now we'll just pose for a photo, and that's all she wrote. And here we are. 10 whole posters later. Can you believe we made it this far? I sure can't. Also, yes, I'm still gonna be wearing the costume. I'm gonna squeeze this thing out for the $15 that it's worth. In all seriousness, this video took an incredibly long time to put together, but it's probably the most love that I've put into a project ever. So thank you so much for watching and liking and subscribing and commenting. It is overwhelming to me, the support that you guys have already given, so thank you. I hope that this video inspires you. I hope that you go and create art because of it, because that's my goal, is for you to realize that your art is also important. Because for a long time, I didn't believe that about myself. So say it with me. Your art, my art is important. Very good. I did want to give a quick shout out to Louis Zong, Sam Greenfield, and Yes MCX for letting me use their music in this video. They are actually insane at what they do, and if you guys don't go show them all the love and support, you don't get love and support from me anymore. So go do that. All right, until next time. Sling.